Recording in progress.
We'll go ahead and get started. I just wanted to say again, good morning. Pleased to be chair now of the Senate Fire and EMS Caucus, along with Senator Katie Muth, who's my current co-chair at the Senate Veteran Affairs Emergency Preparedness Committee, and the past Democrat chair of the committee, Senator Lindsey Williams. And in the House, the caucus is chaired by Representatives Frank Ferry and Jennifer Amara. And in February, we reformed this caucus to address issues and initiatives supporting first responders across the Commonwealth. As many of you are aware, on this Zoom meeting, we are facing issues throughout the Commonwealth on fire and EMS every day. It's important to note that while this is the first official meeting of the caucus, the General Assembly has been active on a number of issues. Most recently, in June, we held a press conference with the EMS partners. We promoted several initiatives, including the EMS Compact at Senate Bill 861, and we extended the ambulance staffing waiver, House Bill 2097, and an increase in the ALS, BLS reimbursement rates. Thanks to the efforts of both chambers, all three initiatives are now signed into law. And in addition, Representative Frank Ferry, the House Fire and EMS Caucus Chair, was successful and able to shepherd his fireworks reform bill through the legislative process. Now ultimately get some more dollars for our fire and EMS agencies. And meanwhile, my Senate Bill 739, now Act 10 of 2022, permitted career fire companies to participate in the fire and EMS loan program. The voters had approved this change in the May primary. More significantly, the measure also provides an infusion of $25 million to our EMS agencies. On top of that, this year's budget package, which provided for the stabilization of the fire relief program with Act 53 of 2022. While these are all substantial accomplishments, there's a lot more work that's needed. As chairman of the caucus and Senate Veteran Affairs Emergency Preparedness Committee, I am committed to working throughout these issues with both fire and EMS communities. While there are a few remaining days left in the General Assembly's legislative session, I'm hopeful that we'll be able to get legislation that would implement the fireworks funding into law. I'm also excited that my junior fire legislation, Senate Bill 1027, is moving in the House. That my fire course registry measure, Senate Bill 1265, is moving this week in the Senate. Together as a caucus, we can learn from one another, and together we can accomplish more. As such, I'm pleased that we're going to have each of the major fire and EMS organizations have an opportunity to make some brief statements this morning and to touch on their top priorities that are left in the few days of session as we head into 2023. Before we go into those presentations, though, I'd like to recognize my fellow co-chairs. Senator Katie Muth, are you with us? You want to join in? Well, we'll move then to Senator Lindsey Williams. I see the senator on.
Thank you, Senator Stefano. Thank you all for being here at our first new meeting. And yes, we have done a lot of work, but there is still much to be done, some of it more complicated. And so I know that I learn every time companies about what they need. And I look forward to working in this caucus to hear more about what you need across the state, and then how we can get that work done to make those bigger changes that are going to take a little while to get across the finish line. So thank you all for being here, for sharing your expertise, not just today, but in all the days you've done so far and all the future days. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Senator. And as I mentioned, Representative Frank Ferry chairs the House committee. Since he's with us, I believe, Representative Ferry, would you like to make a comment? I don't think he's on. I need to work on my list of participants. Here we go. All right, then moving on. Roll right into our program. I would like to recognize each of our speakers and ask them for about 5 minutes to present. And then we're going to hold off on any questions until each one of us had a chance to talk. So first, we're going to start with our acting fire commissioner, state fire commissioner, Chaz McGarvey. Chaz?
Thank you, Senator. So just to go over a few things that are happening here in the office with recruitment retention. As you know, the administrator has been hired here and setting up different working focus groups throughout the state to finalize the program. And they're really doing some good work. We are still in need of hiring the staff that will travel throughout the state. The last posting that we put out, we only had 2 applicants, and unfortunately, neither took the positions due to the pay scale. So we're going to look to revamp the posting to better reflect what the job is going to do, and it's going to take us a little more time. State Fire Advisory Board, we're still waiting on Region 9 to be seated, which is Bucks, Chester, Delaware, Montgomery, and Philadelphia. With that said, I do feel there are probably too many regions, and after the initial 2-year period, I think we should go from 9 down to 7, and that 7th being the cities of Pittsburgh, Allentown, and Philadelphia, as they have different needs and wants than the rest of the most of the other counties. I'm going to move forward with getting our first meeting scheduled here probably in October, and hopefully that Region 9 seat will be sat by then. And it's my plan to use this board to move our fire service forward. And the first thing we're going to do is look at the fire relief funding formula and the uses of the relief fund. So with the fire relief fund, with the passing of Act 91/2020, our office has taken over the relief program. The newest legislation helps fix the funding for the relief and provides no less than 85 million is being well received, and I thank you all for that. As you know, we're supposed to have a report regarding relief funding formula and the services to you by November 30th. I am going to request, and I have requested to extend that period to November 30th of 2023, since the board hasn't met yet. And I believe it's very important that we get this process done right, as this relief funding is probably going to be here for the next 30 to 40 years. State training, the ACADA system is currently being implemented, and this is the system that will house the training registry for all firefighters that is part of Act 91 in the Commonwealth. It's my plan to have more online training for our firefighters, as I believe we need to get out and bring our training to the firefighters instead of making them come to Harrisburg and taking time off of their schedules. It's just not right. With that said, training is being delivered by external training agencies, community colleges, and academies. In the future, I do believe we need to build a hierarchy within the State Fire Academy at the top, sending these programs in a more uniform practice down through these different training academies to make sure that the training is consistent across the Commonwealth. Along with the recruitment, we are also approached by the Pennsylvania Career Fire Chiefs Association, working with them to create a leadership certification course for fire officers in Pennsylvania. That's really in its beginning stages, so that's going to take some time, but we've got some great ideas with that. The grants and loans, the Fire Company and Emergency Medical Services Grant Program was open the first week of September and will remain open for 45 days. We had 29 companies that didn't complete their final reports from the last grant. So we extended the final reporting requirement for another week for those companies. Unfortunately, there were still several of them that didn't do what was necessary, so they will not be eligible for the 2022-2023 grant. And I personally reached out to all of them on their own to make sure that they would do this, and they didn't. The future fireworks legislation, as you spoke about, Senator, it creates more grants for the office here as well as other programs, and it creates a lot more responsibility for the office with no additional staffing. I do not know how we are going to be able to process those grants if within that grant legislation that's going to be approved in the future, you don't provide monies for staffing for the office. We were very, very lucky to get through the EMS grant. And I can tell you there were staff here that were looking to leave because the process was so frustrating, and within the time frame we had to have things done. So I would ask that you please consider additional staffing when you approve those grants. The PenFIRS project, which is the National Fire Incident Reporting software program, we're in the procurement stages for a new fire incident reporting system, and that should be completed by July of 2023. As for my future considerations, I do believe strongly that we need to get a fire registry and licensing, or some sort of licensing for the fire companies here in the Commonwealth, as we really have no grasp on the number of fire companies and trained firefighters we have. We have that number from the SR6 report, but we all know within that 38,000 is that firefighter who runs with 2 or 3 fire companies, so he's counted within that number 2 or 3 times. And that number also includes several fire companies that have put their social members in there. Like there was a report they wanted from Cumberland County, and there's a volunteer fire company that had over 278 volunteer firefighters. And I know that we all know that's not the truth. So we've got to get a better grasp on the numbers of things we got. And I know with just this last session, people were asking for numbers from the office here, and we really had a hard time trying to get that information. So we got to get some kind of fire registry going here, similar to what EMS has. The last thing is, as we move forward, I've been here just about 6 months now, and the office has taken on a lot more responsibilities over the time it's been here. And I really think we're probably going to need to look to restructure and reorganize the office. And just because I use the analogy of it's like a 5-gallon jug of baseballs, where all these programs have been thrown at it over the years. And although they're touching each other, there's still a lot of space around those balls, not allowing for continuity with the programs. And the staff is really trying to do the best that they can, but it's difficult with the current setup. So we'll be looking to do something like that, as well as, we've done a great job in focusing on what we can do to help the fire and EMS services. But since I've been here, the one thing that is troubling to me is I think we're forgetting about the people we serve. And Pennsylvania has led the nation the last 3 years with civilian fire deaths. And so I'm going to be coming forward to look to hopefully put a position in this office of state fire marshal that will look to bring programs to help reduce that number significantly, so that we are able to do what we need to do to better serve the citizens of Pennsylvania, as well as our firefighters. We're also looking to do, as I said, more online classes for the firefighters, and really that's all I have for you.
Well, thanks, Commissioner. I really appreciate your update, and to take note of some of the situations you've presented. So we'll move right along to the PA Fire Emergency Services Institute Executive Director, Jerry Ozark. Jerry, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Senator Stefano and members of the Fire and EMS Caucus. We appreciate all the efforts that have been accomplished so far, and look forward to continuing our efforts to improve and sustain the Pennsylvania Fire and EMS services. Pennsylvania Fire and Emergency Services is a nonprofit advocacy and educational organization serving all members of the Commonwealth Fire Service, combination career and volunteer. We have a very active board of directors that works throughout the community. One of our most successful efforts over the last year has been conducting town hall meetings and listening from the ground and hearing what's going on. We certainly support all of the efforts that have been accomplished so far. Our goals before the end of the year include getting the fireworks legislation, the distribution of the funding for the fireworks for those 5 or 6 grant programs. We're very excited about that, and would like to see that completed. Also, the fire registry, again, is very important, and the junior firefighter modernizing and moving forward to looking at the junior firefighting legislation from the legislative end. I just want to very briefly bring you up to date on September 1 of 2022. The former SR6 commission members and the members that were still available, and staff, members from the statewide associations and organizations, and staff from the House and Senate met at the Pennsylvania Association of Township Supervisors office to discuss our next steps and what things look like in the future. And we've basically come to several conclusions, and I'm speaking from fire alone. I'll let Heather and Dawn speak a little bit more of EMS on regards to that. that we've accomplished a tremendous amount of things with SR6, but now some of the more complicated things need to be addressed in looking at it. You know, should there be a minimum standard for training? Should there be a standard of cover for communities in Pennsylvania? Should there be expanded training in the more rural areas of Pennsylvania where there's more of a coordinated effort? The Fireworks Grant Program is going to be a real great program that will give capital equipment grants to fire schools that are in rural areas in Pennsylvania, but there are still much more to do. Again, some of the organizational structures of our fire and EMS still need addressed. One of the things I know we've all on this call or on this meeting, and I know the senator's staff and many others have put a lot of time and effort into Senate Bill 698, the authorities legislation. And it's those type of things that we need to continue to look at in whatever form that may be, moving into next session to give the tools needed to our counties, our boroughs, our townships, and our cities so they can continue, and our fire and EMS organizations, so they can continue to modernize and move forward. So with that, I thank you very much for the ability to have this meeting today. We will continue to support the Office of the State Fire Commissioner, EMS office as needed to provide advice, feedback, and any assistance as required. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Jerry. Much appreciated. Moving on to the Firefighter Association of the state of Pennsylvania, we have legislative consultant Tom Santana. Tom, you have the floor.
Good morning. Thank you, Chairman Stefano and everyone on the call. First off, I just wanted to thank the members and staff on the call for what I feel was a very productive legislative session, and looking forward to finishing strong here at the end of the session. And my remarks are going to focus solely on the remaining pieces of legislation that Firefighters Association State of Pennsylvania would like to see accomplished by the end of the session. The first, of course, is Senate Bill 1027, which is Senator Stefano's Junior Firefighters Bill, which is on the House floor. The second, of course, is House Bill 1178, which is Representative Jerry Knowles' bill, which I'm now calling the Fire and EMS Omnibus Bill, which was amended in the House Veterans Affairs and Emergency Preparedness Committee last week to contain the fireworks implementation language that many organizations on this meeting certainly support in a big way. Those two bills, Senate Bill 1027 and House Bill 1178, I noticed are both marked for second consideration on the House floor this week on Tuesday. Certainly when House Bill 1178 comes back to the Senate, we would certainly ask the Senate to concur on those changes, which I feel that everybody does agree with. Those are the bills that we'd like to focus on for the remainder of the session. Looking forward in the next session, certainly, as a few speakers have brought up already, Senate Bill 698, the municipal authorities legislation, is something we'd really like to continue working on next session. Got a great start on this session, and like to continue to keep working on that. So those are my comments, and I thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Tom. Much appreciated. Next, we'll hear from the PA Career Fire Chiefs Association, the president, Dustin Urich. Dustin?
Yeah, good morning to Chairman Stefano and everybody in attendance. So we're kind of focused on the same things that it seems like everyone else is in line with. We're certainly not going to reinvent the wheel here with their previous remarks. One of the big things that we would like to everybody to know is that we currently are comprised of over 100 current and retired career and combination fire chiefs from across the Commonwealth, and we have a great outreach with those individuals, with the main goal to provide professional advancement of our fire service and better protection for those who we serve. Our short term that we're looking at as well is the fireworks legislation as far as the funding goes. Our membership definitely could greatly benefit from those funds, especially through grants and equipment. We know that our budgets are becoming more and more strict and cut in many ways due to the cost of just doing business anymore. So that would certainly be a great benefit to us. And then, long term, we have several things that we really want to focus on and make sure that something gets resolved with it. And that's one is the recruitment and retention. It's a kind of a ripple effect from all aspects, from the volunteer to the career. We are well aware that the volunteer numbers are drastically reducing, which a lot of our career members came from volunteer staffing, moved up through the ranks, decided this is what they want to do full time, and from there they moved into the job. And unfortunately, those numbers are drastically reducing as well. The number of applicants in many of the departments are cut in half. Some of these departments are seeing 50 and 60% reductions across the board. So that's one of the big things that we want to make sure that we look how we're going to boost those numbers, as well as once those individuals are in our system, how we're going to keep them there. And kind of reverting back to some of Commissioner McGarvey's comments in regards to protection of our people and early recognition and so forth. We want to really focus on 10-year mandates for smoke detectors across the board, as well as our vested interest in sprinklers, in residential, and as well as to expand commercial buildings with that legislation as well. So that's pretty much what we're really focused on right now, among other things. But I appreciate the time and allowing us to talk. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dustin. Next up, we have the PA Professional Firefighters Association. We'll hear from Recording Secretary Kevin Russler and the Eastern Vice President Jack Gaffney. Gentlemen, you have the floor.
Good morning. My name is Kevin Russler. I'm the Recording Secretary of the Pennsylvania Professional Firefighters. Thank you, Caucus chairs and members, for inviting us to speak with you today. The Pennsylvania Professional Firefighters represent over 6,000 career full-time firefighters, EMS professionals, and paramedics across the Commonwealth. These include major urban centers, as well as the suburbs and rural municipalities. Our top priorities are to continue to speak to for our brothers and sisters in the full-time career fire service. Similar to the previous speakers, we would like to identify a couple of critical pieces of legislation percolating in the Senate. Senate Bill 775, sponsored by Senator Bartolotta, protects our members who have been diagnosed with post-traumatic stress injury due to the objectively abnormal and stressful working conditions. This bill was reported from the Senate Labor and Industry Committee earlier this session. We hope to rekindle this important conversation in the future. Additionally, we support efforts to recruit, train, and retain a strong firefighting contingent, as well as promote updates to sprinklers, fire alarm systems, and the like. So thank you for your time. Appreciate it.
Jack, are you with us? You want to add to anything?
I am. Just to echo what Kevin had said. Let me start for the record. Jack Gaffney, Eastern Vice President for the PPFFA. As Kevin said, our priorities are to continue to speak on behalf of our brothers and sisters across the Commonwealth to ensure their safety and their rights moving forward. We always has been, always will be. So. Just like Kevin said, with what's coming across the state, we're looking to protect our membership. So thank you for allowing us to be part of this program.
Certainly. Thank you very much. Shifting gears slightly, we'll move on to the EMS universe. We'll hear from the Ambulance Association of Pennsylvania. We have Dawn DeRemus, Legislative Chair, and Heather Sherrar, Executive Director.
Unfortunately, you only have me. Unfortunately, Don was not able to make it at the last minute. So he does send his apologies. And I wanted to thank you for reinvigorating this caucus. I think it's incredibly important. And as we were talking about all the SR6 initiatives, this was one of the items that came up that we need to be on the forefront. So I do thank you for that. And I also wanted to thank you, going back to Jerry's comment, this legislative session, we actually saw over $80 million in funding towards EMS. And there were grants that went directly to EMS, $6 million in 2021, which was a special one-time COVID grant, and then the $25 million as well. So that's $31 million. And then with our medical assistance increase, we estimate that's about $50 million, which going forward, that will help to sustain EMS because we are in dire straits. As far as what we need between now and the end of this session, we are looking to support the 5 enabling pieces of legislation of the fireworks tax so that that money can then flow. Sorry, Chaz, we really need the money. I know you need the staff. So that is something that we are supporting. When it comes to looking towards the future, you will hear us talk about reimbursement, staffing, and funding. That is the priority for us. When you're looking at recruitment and retention, a lot of the legislation mentions volunteers. And as Dustin had mentioned, the volunteers are dwindling. So we need help not only for the volunteer end, but also for the career end and those who are paid. Let's see, we should investigate a statewide fee schedule. We've been investigating what's called GEMT, or Medical Assistance Assessment Program, where you would pay an assessment on the universe of claims, and then for your medical assistance reimbursements, you would pull down that money quarterly. But there are other states who also have a statewide fee schedule, which kind of balances out the reimbursement rates. There is a fee schedule for workers' comp. There's a fee schedule for auto. So it would be very helpful to have a little bit more reimbursement for EMS. Funding, funding, excuse me. We need to look at EMS. We have been designated as an essential service. And what exactly does that mean? Does that mean that the municipalities have to fund us? We do need help. There are some pilot programs out there. Pike County has one that has been relatively successful. As Kevin mentioned, PTSI and PTSD, we need that as a workers' comp benefit for EMS. And I think I will stop there. I don't want to kind of go on and on, but I think that's kind of what the priority is for the 2023-2024 session. It's reimbursement, staffing, and funding.
Well, thanks, Heather, for that information. We'll move on to the PA Emergency Health Services Council. We have David Jones as the president and Jeanette Swade, executive director. You have the floor.
Thank you, Chairman Stefano. Let me start out first by saying that we at PHSC supports the technical corrections for the fireworks legislation that's underway right now. And we also want to echo what Heather said here, that we're supporting them to improve reimbursement, both through medical assistance and through other insurers. At the end of the day, you have to have money to provide staffing, to provide equipment, to provide the service. Our EMS crisis continues. It's not over now that COVID's nearly out of the way. We have the crisis continuing both at the field and administrative levels. We have ongoing staffing and funding issues, and we can't grow the programs without additional funding and staffing to do that. PHSC in the next year is going to be dedicating time to increasing efficiencies in the systems. We'd like to see some corrections made in the acts and the regs and department policies to assist the local EMS agencies with financing and staffing issues. We do have field providers in working groups here that make recommendations to our board of directors, and we can pass those recommendations on to the legislators if you need assistance in new legislation or working with in any existing legislation out there and getting our opinion on that. We'd like to look at investigating act changes that might, it's been 13 years, if my math is correct, since the EMS Act was passed. A lot has changed in 13 years, and we need to be looking at changes that can make the system more efficient and can take advantage of new technologies we didn't have before. As I said, our staff stands ready to assist legislative staff in pending or proposed legislation and reviewing that and offering our opinions. We would, however, like to keep in mind, we would like to block any changes to the regulations surrounding the use of National Registry until we have some data that can tell us one way or another whether that legislation is necessary. We would, some of our other efforts this year is we would like to increase regulation, policy, and act changes to help alleviate funding and staffing concerns. And we want to keep in mind that no matter what we do as far as legislation goes, is that we have to balance solutions to work for both rural and non-rural EMS providers. We have a lot of problems going on now in the rural areas that may need legislation to address their issues, but we want to make sure that whatever changes are made do not affect the non-rural providers negatively. And that's all I have, Chairman. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much. Jeanette, did you want to add anything?
Thank you very much. Actually, I just want to reinforce the National Registry concern. I know that's something that's in the pipeline, and Dave did mention it. We truly understand the concerns with National Registry. We've heard them for many, many years, actually, from when we started with National Registry, and then they've come back around. But we do caution everyone to not make a reaction with a piece of legislation that has not been vetted well with data. And I know the department has tried to secure some additional data from the National Registry to take a closer look at things. So I again want to support that action. I think that we need to make decisions that we're using the data that is available to us, and that is forthcoming. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And that concludes all of our speakers today. So I want to open up the floor to questions of any of our members, if you have any questions for our panelists today. I'm hearing none, seeing none. Second call. Any other questions? I'm going to build my list, but I'll save it for another day. Well, that being said, really appreciate everyone's cooperation today and participating. I prefer live person meetings over these ones with the tiny squares. You know, as we heard it mentioned, we are getting out of that crisis, and I think we can exchange our ideas so much better when we're in person. But I know with the crazy schedules that we have today, especially being back in session, as my colleagues will well know, it's almost impossible for us to squeeze everything in. So I thought this would work. But you know, we have a lot of work we need to do before we get to the end of session. We talked a little bit about that, but I appreciate everybody's input today and the feedbacks from all of our members, and look forward to, as we move forward, to continue this nice list of accomplishments and keep adding to it. We have a lot of work yet to do, a lot of issues to address. And I know as we stay connected together, we'll be able to do that more effectively. So with that, we'll end today's call and look forward to meeting again very soon. Thank you so much.